Somebody messaged me about. They said, hi, I recently got a job with the DoD as a cybersecurity analyst. There was no knowledge transfer and I was just thrown into work, and my main task is to maintain the plan of action and milestones. I'm just kind of lost, not even sure what my day-to-day is supposed to be, which one of your courses can guide me for help. So this one really got to me because this is exactly what happened to me. And what happened was I was working on this right here, this little thing over here that you see. This is DITSCAP. So this came out in like the 90s. Like, this is really dating me. I've been doing this since the 90s. Risk management framework type work. This is certification and accreditation. They didn't even call it risk management back then. So it was certification and accreditation. It was Department of Defense Information Technology Security Certification and Accreditation, DITSCAP, which turned into DICAP, which then turned into Risk Management Framework for DoD, Risk Management Framework for IT. So that's what they call it now. Anyway, so I started off with this, and I didn't have anyone to guide me. There was basically no one there knew how to do it. They knew it had to be done, and they had the manuals and everything. They had all the regulations, but they didn't know what to do. No one knew what to do, and there was no guidance. So I had to figure it out from scratch on my own. And the way that I did it was to read the the policies. I read the security policies, and it was a nightmare because it's essentially like it was a nightmare because I would read one document and it would reference several other documents. And then I would read those reference documents, and then they would reference three other documents. So essentially I ended up reading like all of the Department of Defense's information instructions, their guidance, some of the laws. I mean, I was just reading everything, and then I had to like make notes to break it all down in steps that I can understand, because there was no training at all back then. There was nothing about this DITSCAP stuff, this certification and accreditation. There was just nothing there. But I started to dig in there for myself to figure it out. And essentially, it's all the stuff that I teach these days. I mean, it's evolved and it's gotten better over the years, but there's still like different steps you're supposed to do in phases. Some of the smarter things that they've done is they've mapped it to the system development life cycle and then tied privacy in there. None of that stuff was there when I first started. So it's more something that you do as a part of the engineering process now, whereas before it was kind of like, do all this paperwork, and people would just kind of pencil whip a lot of things. Unfortunately, and that's why a lot of organizations got hacked. But I want to answer the question here. What do you do as a cybersecurity person doing NIST risk management framework or security compliance? What do you do on a daily basis? Well, on a daily basis, what you're doing is you are making sure that the system that you're assigned to is in compliance, right? How do you do that? Well, one of the things you're doing is what he said, which is a plan of action and milestone, a POAM. So, or you might even call it an action plan. So different organizations might have a different name for it, but essentially you're doing the same thing. I'm looking for a plan of action and milestone that I can show on the screen. Give me a second. So essentially what you're seeing here on the screen is what a plan of action and milestone looks like, or a plan of action, whatever your organization calls it. It looks the same. This is coming from Fedramp, by the way. This is not it. Hold on a second. Where is it? Hold on a second. All right, so this is the Fedramp plan of action and milestone template. Now, this is just one example. There's many different examples of this. There's database examples. An organization will take it and put it into a database, and then you fill it out that way. But essentially, you're filling out the same things here in the plan of action and milestone. Now, this goes through great detail about what you're doing with it. I found this on Fedramp if you want to go ahead and find it for free. Or you can log on to ConvoCourses.com and log on to my courses, where I'm talking about risk management framework for ISSOs, and I walk you through specific examples of a plan of action and milestone. But here it is. The plan of action milestone has the little worksheet here that will, if we can access this, let's see if we can get into this. This document breaks down exactly what you're supposed to do, what an organization is supposed to do for the plan of action and milestone. But it's heavy lifting because it kind of sticks around for a long time, and I'll explain that in a second. Here is one example of a plan of action and milestone. Normally you have the who, what, when, where, and why of when you're going to fix a certain weakness in your system. You have a system, and let's say you guys have weak passwords, and there's a reason why you can't fix it immediately, right? Maybe you have 20,000 systems and it's going to take you a month to actually do it. If you can't do it right away, you might do a plan of action and milestone so that you can say, we're working on it. Here's the person who's doing it. Here's the time frame we're doing. We already started it. We're about halfway through, things like that. So it starts off with, what is the weakness? And in this case, the weakness is, say, AC2. AC2 is you guys don't have, your organization doesn't have an access management plan in place, or maybe it's IA2. It's a security control, and you would put that security control here, and you would explain the weakness. That's what you do here, and then you'd explain what platforms does it touch. It might be a whole bunch of platforms. It might be a bunch of IPs. You'd put those in there, or you would reference another document that has all the IPs in there. Who's the point of contact? Who should we contact to make sure that this thing gets done? And that's what this one is all about. Then it's what's the schedule? When is this going to be done? When is the projected due date? You'd put that in there. What are the milestones? So this means, like, what are the steps that you're going to do? And a lot of times what organizations will do is say, on February 5th we're going to do this, on February 10th we're going to do this, and then in March, by the time March comes around, we're going to be on the final 20%, we'll have only 10% of the systems left. You'll have like all the big milestones that you're going to get. So, and then you have the status. This is a running status, and this is where the daily work comes in, because this is something, it might not even be daily, it might be weekly. If you have a lot of these plan of action and milestones, you can see how this might be a lot of work, because you're doing meetings. Like, you're not doing all this. If you're a system security person, if you're a cybersecurity person, you're not doing all this stuff in a vacuum, right? You're having to meet with the managers to tell them, hey, here's where we are. I need this information from the database team, because we need the database team to interact with the access control team, and then they have to interact with the network team. Like, there's different people that you have, all the stakeholders, all the people with an interest to make the system run effectively is who you're having to meet up with. And it's just a lot of meetings, to be honest with you. So one of the main things you're doing is meetings to make sure things are getting done. You're not typically doing all this stuff by yourself, right? There's a few things that we do as cybersecurity analysts and cybersecurity professionals that we have hands on. If you're a firewall administrator, yeah, that's what you're doing all day long. You're just you're putting in rules, you're putting in descriptions of those rules, you're making sure everything's going properly, looking at logs, things like that. But another thing you might do is a scan. You might run scans on the network, and now you have this huge mountain of data that you have to go through, thousands of logs that you have to actually go through and figure out, okay, what are my critical controls? Here are the low controls. Okay, we're going to put those to the side. Here are the medium controls. We have higher priority right here. We're going to stick with the highs and the criticals, and you're going to focus on those things and work with maybe another team. Maybe you work with the vulnerability assessment team, a vulnerability management team, and they're working through this, saying, hey, we just launched these patches on Tuesday, so all of these should be clean. Run your scan on Wednesday because we've already run our patches on Tuesday. Like, you're doing that. It's a lot of meetings. Like, that's what your day-to-day looks like. You're doing meetings about the plan of action and milestones on all the things you couldn't fix. You're doing meetings on, hey, we ran this scan, here are the results. You're doing meetings with managers to say, hey, this is what's going on with this. The manager is asking you, hey, what's going on with this vulnerability, and you're having to meet with other teams to gather that information to explain to them, here's why this vulnerability needs to be fixed. Here's why we should do it in 30 days per our security policy. It's supposed to be done X, Y, and Z. It's a lot of meetings, right? The higher you go up in the food chain for cybersecurity, the more meetings you're going to do. If you're just doing the firewall, you probably won't have that many meetings. If you're just doing scans, you probably won't have that many meetings. But the higher you are in the food chain, the higher up in security compliance you are, the more you're doing meetings. You're talking with the CIO, the CSO, you're talking with privacy managers, you're talking with anybody who you need to actually get this stuff done. So that is the main thing, as an ISSO or as a cybersecurity person that you're doing is doing meetings about all of the, and the more systems and assets and information your system has, the more meetings you're probably going to have, the higher up you are in the food chain. If you're a manager, that's all you do is meetings. And another thing that you're going to probably do is a lot of documentation. If you're doing plan of action and milestones, especially, you're going to be tracking down different policies. You're going to be making sure the policies are updated. You're going to make sure that processes and procedures are being done properly. It's a lot of documentation and chasing down documentation. So that's another thing that you might have to do. That's it. I just wanted to talk about how I started off the same way. I started off knowing nothing. Like I didn't have any, no one taught me to do, nobody knew. I was in an office where no one knew what the day-to-day was for for an information system security officer. We didn't even know that there was such a role. They didn't even know that. So I was the one who knew what that was because I read the regulations on it. I was in the Air Force at the time. So yeah, I was in that same situation. So that email really touched me. And I just wanted to explain, like, if you're a new person in these roles, if you're new to risk management framework, there are a lot of resources out there just kind of scattered to the winds, and you can get some training. You might want to ask your organization. They might pay for your training. And I'm not suggesting you particularly go to mine. Like, you might have a better one that will actually fly to your location for X amount of dollars, and they'll teach you what you need to know. But you're not, like, it's not a vacuum. There's tons of information out there, not just my stuff, right? Just go out there, hunt for it. But I do have ConvoCourses if you want to go there. It is the best stuff and the best price out there. I'm just gonna put that out there for you. But that said, there's tons of stuff out there, and a lot of it's for free. It's just all over the place. It's all of these different regulations. It's all those things are tied up all over the internet, on Department of Defense sites, on the NIST sites, all over the place. All right, that's it for this one, guys. I'll talk to you on the next one.